So today I thought we'd talk about the significance of responsibility. Significance of responsibility. Responsibility is the third key principle of our SAR mentality, subsistence, which infinite thinking, infinite living, and responsibility all intertwined to create um, a sovereign individual. Because African unity and all future development of Africa is going to be based on having sovereign individual Africans. So, responsibility is often confused for rights. So, instead of human responsibility advocates and campaigns, we only see human rights campaigns. Oh, my rights have been abused. Oh, this leader is a bad leader. Oh, all hell is breaking loose. Oh, Africa. Oh, people are being killed. And now, of course, with, we're now complaining our civil liberties that are being abused during this COVID crisis with this lockdown where people are starving in their houses. And we have now become authoritarian and complaining, all rights this, all rights that. But I guess the question is, what has put Africa in this situation where we are no longer deserving of rights? Because you have to realize that for our rights to be abused, it's us ourselves abusing our rights. Because if you really believe in individual sovereignty, then there's no way your rights can be abused on your watch because you'd do something about it. But why can't you do anything about it? You can't do anything about it because you don't truly believe in your sovereignty as an individual. You do not. And the word belief has been misunderstood to mean sort of external acceptance. But the origin of the word belief means be life, life be, life to be. So it's more of action, how you act out life. For example, to believe in God is not just to say it out loud that, oh, I believe in Jesus, oh, I'm saved. Like how many preachers and really uninformed or ignorant religious leaders teach their flock. You know, to believe in God is to actually act out a life showing that you understand that God exists. And also to know where God exists, because people don't know where God exists. So again, they look at God as if he's something out there, forgetting that God is something in here. To see God, the creator of the universe, you have to look from within. And then from within, you connect with the entire universe. And then you see God. You don't see God from looking out. Out is delusion. So, and even, Jesus and the devil, good and bad, all that is within you. So every time you don't accept Jesus, for example, you are accepting the devil. And every time you not accepting the devil, you are accepting Jesus. And if you don't choose between the two, then even the Bible calls you vomit because you're useless. What does this mean? This means that the whole world and what transpires in the world is at the core determined by the individual. So now let's take it back to Africa. This means that all the problems of Africa, including bad leadership, apeness, these colonialized minds, corruption, the wars, and our topic today, the abuse of human rights, is all determined by the individual. It's the individual's fault. It's your fault. It's my fault. It's the individual's fault. Excuse me. So when you see a bad leader out there in your country, you must very first blame yourself first. You must understand that it's your fault that there's a bad leader. Because you're being irresponsible. And that's the only reason why you got such a leader. And it's not that leader's fault that is there. It's your irresponsibility. Because no one can just wake up and say, from today onwards, I'm the leader of this country. Power is not given. Power is taken. And to take power to a level of a national leader implies that the nation has allowed that leader to take that power. Otherwise, if you don't accept that leader to take that power, there's no way the leader would be there. If tomorrow I called a press conference and I announced that I'm a president, I'll be a laughing stock because I will have said the words, but you would not have given me the power. So all those bad leaders out there are our fault. And apeness has gotten you Africans or us Africans to think that the trust in the leader is a favor to us from the leaders. As if the leader is the sovereign, the state is the sovereign, and the individual is nothing. This is what's in our heads. And this is why we are not deserving of rights today. And again, why our rights are abused left and right. Because and this is apeness. I call this apeness because this is one of the colonial diseases. This is one of what came up after the death of the African spirit, because the African spirit was a subsistent spirit. It was very clear on individual sovereignty and what responsibility meant. In Africa, there was nothing like rights. Rights came out of responsibility. Rights are meant to protect you as a responsible citizen, to help you be responsible. It's like an enabler. It's like a vehicle. Rights is the fuel that drives responsibility. So to understand that today, instead of people talking about, fight for human responsibility, there's a fight for human rights, shows you again the reverse of what's supposed to be, what ought to be, and the madness, the insanity in our heads, where we put rights before responsibility. a simple lesson to Africa is that all these Europeans that you see out there, the Western world, and today they have capitalism that they are very happy with, even though they also have the East has communism and they are competing on what works. But all that has come from a lot of war, death, and suffering at the individual level to cause them to become responsible in accepting whatever economic system they have accepted. And their economic systems have already expressed in previous videos that they are exploitative. They're exploitative because both the East and West come from not having as much as Africa. And so colonialism was very important for the two. And trade is also very important for the two. Because for them they can't be self-reliant indeed, but then they would be if they could. And in fact today they've done a lot with capitalism to make themselves self-reliant through trade. But Africa that can be self-reliant without trade has instead become the exploited. But if we were educated well, we would understand that the answer to this problem begins at the individual level. What are you doing as an African to stop yourself or your future, your children and their future from being exploited? This is how you regain individual sovereignty, because it's all about dialogue, and from dialogue we get education, and education is the only way to free yourself. Knowledge is how you empower yourself into sovereignty, and knowledge comes from dialogue. That's why free speech is one of the most important fundamental rights of any civilized entity. You know, could be the First Amendment in the US and even British common law. Free speech is very important. And today, it has been abused in many ways, and so the right is infringed upon. But mostly, the only infringements to free speech have been if you're screaming fire in a cinema, or you're using free speech to, again, infringe on other people's rights and responsibilities. Other than that, free speech has been very much respected. In Africa, free speech was very, very important as well, because free speech is how you empower the self. Free speech is how subsistence takes hold of a community. I've told you subsistence should be the primary economic activity of Africa, and each child should be raised self-reliant first before they can be introduced to capitalism and all these other things. Because before you're deserving of capital, you're deserving of capital to change the world, you must be a sovereign individual. Must be a responsible person. Because if you're not a responsible person, then you don't deserve money, and that's why you see very many fake businesses and very many uh, really hopeless innovations coming up. You see our technology is backward. Yeah, I know we look at them and we think it's great, but we are really backward compared to where we are supposed to be if we had all been responsible. That's why you see the technology has turned out into privacy problems, data problems, AI. Now there's a new technology that is threatening, the health of human beings. or we believe so. All these problems uh, are coming up because we have forgotten our responsibility. So there's a lot of innovation and invention without responsibility. In the same way, for Africa, there's a lot of leadership without responsibility. So we have put leaders in power, we have trusted leaders to govern us out of naivety. Because frivolous, easy trust is trust out of naivety. It is stupid, it's ridiculous to trust anybody. Like, to trust, I trust you. Nobody should trust anybody. Because trusting is naivety. And if you trust and you're burnt by the trust, someone betrays you, then you become narcissistic. You become a narcissist, someone who thinks the world is out there to get them, and so they are the only ones that are better than anyone else. They are the only good. And that's worse. That's worse than being naive. You'd rather be naive than a narcissist. But the extremity, the extremes of being naive is becoming a narcissist. Because to be naive is to not know. And if you don't know, you think what you know is what you need to know. Because any half-sane human being can't be comfortable not knowing. Shouldn't be comfortable not knowing. So you become a narcissist. And that's a very terrible place to be. How we need to select our leaders should be out of courage. We should trust them out of courage. We should empower them not because we are naive, but because we are courageous. And where do these leaders come from? The crop of leadership must understand that comes from us, the individuals. So if you raise poor quality individuals, non-sovereign individuals, then when you put them in power, they become entitled because they don't understand that the power is nested in the courageous trust of the individuals, and the individuals can take away the power in a second. That's why you have this entitlement, and leaders become autocrats, once they are given all this power, the arms of power. And they forget that their power is nested in the individual. And also, that's why us, the individuals, have allowed authoritarian autocracy to govern over us. That's why we have let dictators govern over us, because we don't understand our power. We have been mind controlled and manipulated to think the leader has power, and we don't have power. But it's the individual that governs the nation, not the leader. Because if we all sat down home, like how you see, one of the problems of the corona crisis is showing you that if you shut down the economy, all hell breaks loose. That's why you see every government kept these essential, organizations still working. Because they know us, if everything shuts down, well, there's no more state, there's no more country. The leaders need you for them to have even a country to govern. Otherwise, you will tell him, you leader, you're governing yourself now. We're now going to empower someone else to govern. Because empowering is trusting. But there's a difference between trusting out of naivety and trusting out of courage. Trusting out of courage is we are all good enough to do right by the nation, but to make communication and workflow easy, we are trusting this person who is more competent slightly than all of us to rule us. But we shall share, because no one is 100% competent over everyone in everything. That's why hierarchies arise in society. And so we have to work together. And that's why you choose a leader and then you choose the parliament to again amalgamate different opinions from the different areas to create again sort of advisory board and a check to the leader, the executive. The executive is just the executor, by the way. The ideas come from the parliament. And then the judiciary to enforce, you know, what has been agreed on by all of us. So even the judiciary is empowered by us because we are the ones who determine what we need to be protected against by the judiciary, by the law that is made by the legislature and then enforced by the executive and judged by the judiciary. And so the reason why Africa continues to be in this dire state or with this mentality of blaming leaders is because we don't understand that it's our failure. So when you every time you get out there and you hear a person blaming a leader, pointing a finger, you're looking at a very irresponsible person. Because do something about it. You have to be able to do something about it. So again, the Kenrod experience is focused on the future of Africa, African unity. So I tend to ignore the generations above the generations above the youth, because I feel like some of these are beyond salvation. They are gone. But then I have so much trust. I understand that the keys into the future are not with them anyway. The keys within the future are the youth, the youth leaders, the youth, and then the children of Africa. And I also told you that I'm a true believer in the human mind being the most advanced technology that will ever exist in this earthly universe, on the planet Earth. It's again the insanity that makes you think AI is smarter than human beings. AI can never be smarter than human beings. It's like saying you're smarter than God. We've had 1 billion years of existence before AI. So AI can never be smarter than human beings. It can never be smarter than human beings. It can process certain tasks we allow it to know about processing, but they can never replace a human being unless AI is not really a man-made thing, unless AI is really an alien that is controlling the earth and is from a different universe and has also lived for billions and billions of years, maybe even longer than humanity, and so is wiser on universal matters than the human, which is a bit far-fetched. Could be true, but it's a talk for another day. It's a bit far-fetched. But if you really believe that humanity is the most advanced species on Earth, and humanity is what's creating AI, then AI can never be smarter than humanity. It just defies the laws of uh, of being, of existence. So how we invent the future? We invent the future through programming the children. So we need to program the children to be subsistent, sovereign individuals, to understand that we get the right to be their parents because we are doing right by them. And that's why it's important to let the children talk, to dialogue with the children and give them power, and to listen to them, and to guide them, but again let them breathe. Don't be a tyrant. And then don't be overprotective. That's for the mothers. Don't overprotect the child and cripple them. And for the fathers, don't over discipline. Don't be a tyrant and stop the child from breathing. Because the child is that middle ground, and you can either turn them into a hero or an adversary. Today, Africa is filled with adversaries. That's why you see our leaders are adversaries to the community, because we are adversaries to the community. We have ignored our responsibility, and so when we get the power, we are adversaries to the community. Because once you're an adversary, even the good things that you do end up being more hurtful. That's why I was telling you about the innovations of the world today being more hurtful than beneficial. Because they are targeting profits, they are targeting all the wrong things. Capitalism, it targets all profits as opposed to impact and true and changing human lives. And yet capitalism wants to come again and claim that it's because of capitalism that poverty has been eradicated. No! It's not because of capitalism, it's because Africa is waking up. Capitalism is the reason why Africa is poor, because capitalism found Africa rich. Africans have woken up and realized what's going on. You know, after you've suffered enough, you start being responsible. So what you're seeing is Africans becoming responsible again, and because of that, they're doing good by themselves. And that's why even the whole idea of Africans depending on, for example, the UN to police African duties. Man, if you knew the problems of human rights injustices in the West, you wouldn't want those people to be your police in Africa. But also, it's not the responsibility of the UN to police Africa. It's the responsibility of Africa to police Africa. Because only Africa knows what is deserving of rights in Africa. Who is sovereign enough that they deserve the fuel of rights to continue with the responsibilities that they carry on that are beneficial to themselves and then to Africa as a whole. Because I told you that at the end of the day, what you want with subsistence is that by taking care of your basic needs, you become less of a burden to others. And any extras from that responsibility is dispersed to others. To change the authoritarian leadership in Africa starts by changing yourselves from being authoritarian. And that's why in ancient Africa, you are meant to serve in the army, most especially for men, because this is how you earned sovereignty. But today, how many of you have served in the army? No one. And who is your biggest torturer? Who enforces all this authoritarian rule on you? It's the army and the police. Why? Because they have guns. They're the only people responsible enough to be trusted with guns. By serving in the army, you give your life for the nation. And because you give your life for the nation rewards you by making you sovereign. And that's why that military budget is very important in Africa. These are the responsible people, and that's why you see they're the ones that maintain the power in Africa. So as we even talk about African unity, the first steps is we need to find a way of taking each and every African through military service. Each and every African has to give their life for Africa.